The Galactic Council had convened its most audacious meeting in eons, a rare occurrence where emissaries from every sentient species across the known universe gathered to discuss matters of utmost importance. Held aboard the Aurelia Nexus, a colossal space station the size of a small moon, the air hummed with tension. The council chamber, an enormous domed hall glittering with holographic constellations, felt more like an alien zoo than a seat of interstellar diplomacy. Representatives of over 1,000 species squawked, chittered, and droned in their native tongues, their voices barely contained by the translation grids hovering above them. At the heart of the commotion, a delegation of humans occupied one of the smaller, less ostentatious tables, their demeanor noticeably more casual than the dignitaries around them. Among them sat Ambassador Kala Renshaw, a seasoned diplomat with a reputation for turning dire negotiations into victory, or, at the very least, chaos in her favor. Next to her lounged Lieutenant Jared Jinx Monroe, an Earth Forces liaison with a knack for being in the wrong place at the right time. Kala sipped her coffee, the mug's bold print declaring, "World's okayest ambassador," in stark contrast to the formal regalia of her alien peers. Jared idly tapped on his tablet, grinning at a headline about Earth's latest viral dance craze that had inexplicably swept through the outer colonies. The rest of the human delegation maintained an awkward silence, their unease palpable. At the head of the chamber, the Prime Arbiter, a shimmering crystalline being known as Voracis, struck its staff against the floor. The sound resonated like a symphony of shattered glass, instantly silencing the room. "Members of the Galactic Council," Voracis intoned, its voice an otherworldly harmony. "We convene to address a critical matter. The Galactic Treasury has reached a perilously low state, threatening the stability of our collective endeavors. As such, it has been decreed that each member species will contribute a tribute proportional to their planetary resources and technological standing." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Species known for their wealth or industrial might bristled at the implied burden, while the less advanced races exchanged anxious glances. "Humans," Voracis continued, directing its faceted gaze toward Kala and her delegation, "your world has seen rapid ascension in recent centuries. It is time to prove your commitment to the galactic community. We demand tribute." Kala arched an eyebrow, taking a deliberate sip of her coffee before setting the mug down with a theatrical clink. "Define tribute." The hall collectively sucked in a breath, or, in the case of those without lungs, emitted some approximation of shock. Voracis tilted its crystalline form, light refracting ominously. "Tribute, Ambassador, is a gesture of loyalty and respect. For humanity, this equates to 70% of your planetary GDP annually." Silence. The humans stared at the Prime Arbiter, their expressions ranging from disbelief to barely restrained laughter. Kala broke the tension with a sharp exhale through her nose, almost a snort. 70%? She repeated, her tone hovering between incredulous and amused. "You're kidding, right? The proposal is non-negotiable," Voracis replied, its voice colder. "Failure to comply will result in your expulsion from the Council and immediate economic sanctions." Jared leaned toward Kala, whispering, "This feels like one of those nobody expects the humans to survive this moments." Kala smirked. "Good thing we're experts at those." She rose to her feet, her movements deliberate. "Prime Arbiter Voracis," she began, her voice carrying a confidence honed through years of verbal sparring. "While we appreciate the enthusiasm behind your proposal, humanity has a counteroffer." The hall erupted in murmurs again, many incredulous that the humans dared to challenge the decree. "Counteroffer?" Voracis asked, its crystalline body flickering with what might have been irritation. "One word," Kala said, raising a single finger for emphasis. "No." The chamber froze. It wasn't just the audacity of the refusal, it was the simplicity of it. Across the room, alien diplomats exchanged bewildered glances, their various appendages twitching in confusion. "No?" Voracis echoed, as though the concept itself was an anomaly. "That's right," Kala replied. "No. No tribute. No 70%. No chance." Jared stifled a laugh, and the rest of the human delegation looked at Kala as though she just declared war on the galaxy. Ambassador Renshaw, Boris said, its tone hardening. Do you fully grasp the gravity of this decision? Oh, we grasp it, she said, leaning casually on the table. But let's be real. You lot wouldn't be here demanding tribute if you had better options. So, why don't we talk about what you actually need, instead of strong-arming the species least likely to play by the rules? A tense silence filled the chamber, broken only by the faint hum of the translation grids. Kala's words had struck a nerve, and she knew it. Proceed carefully, human, Boris warned, though there was a hint of intrigue in its voice. Kala smiled, a shark-like expression that promised trouble. Careful's not really my style. Back on Earth, the media frenzy was immediate and relentless. News anchors analyzed Kala's defiant no from every conceivable angle, debating whether it was a brilliant act of defiance or a catastrophic blunder. Meanwhile, Jared found himself inundated with messages from both admirers and critics. The Galactic Council's gonna crush us, one email read, while another declared him a hero for standing up to interstellar bullies. Kala, however, was unfazed. She spent the next few hours coordinating with Earth's leaders, brainstorming ways to outmaneuver the Council's inevitable retaliation. Here's the thing, she told Jared during a brief break. The Council doesn't want to wipe us out. They want us as contributors. If we make it clear that we're more valuable as allies than as subjects, they'll back off. And if they don't? Jared asked. Kala grinned. Then we'll make them regret underestimating humanity. In the days that followed, humanity's response began to take shape, a blend of diplomacy, mischief, and sheer audacity. Their first move was to exploit the Council's bureaucracy, filing endless counter-proposals, appeals, and requests for clarification. We're going to drown them in paperwork, Kala said, her eyes glinting with mischief. They'll regret ever targeting a species with lawyers. At the same time, Earth scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to upgrade their defenses, just in case the Council decided to escalate. Jared spearheaded efforts to mobilize Earth's fleet, his military expertise proving invaluable. Despite the growing tension, the humans maintained a surprising level of humor. Memes mocking the Council's tribute demand went viral, with slogans like 70%? Not even for Netflix! And humanity, now with 100% more nope. As the deadline for humanity's compliance loomed, the question remained, would Kala's gamble pay off, or was Earth hurtling toward disaster? The Aurelia Nexus swirled with barely contained chaos. The Galactic Council, stunned into temporary silence by humanity's audacious no, had roared back to life with debates, recriminations, and thinly veiled threats. Within hours of Kala's defiance, the humans found themselves at the center of a political maelstrom. Prime Arbiter Voracis, unaccustomed to being challenged, convened an emergency session of the Council to address humanity's rebellion. Representatives from over 1,000 species filled the chamber, their varied forms bristling with tension and anticipation. Meanwhile, in their comparatively modest quarters, the human delegation was in full crisis mode. Kala Renshaw sat at the center of the room, a holographic display casting a faint blue glow over her sharp features. Around her, aides, strategists, and advisors buzzed like agitated bees. Latest intercepts show increased mobilization from the Torvin Collective and the Brylon Accord, said Jared, who had taken up position at her right. He gestured at the hologram, where several fleets were marked with ominous red icons. They're either gearing up to pressure us, or something worse. Let them, Kala said, her tone casual but her eyes razor-sharp. We need them to overplay their hand. What's the update from Earth? Phase 1 is in full swing, replied Mia Tanaka, Earth's chief strategic analyst, her voice clipped with efficiency. The legal team has filed over 10,000 procedural challenges. At this rate, the Council will be stuck in hearings for decades. That'll buy us time, Kala said, tapping her chin. But we need more than stalling tactics. We need leverage. Jared leaned in, lowering his voice. I hate to be the guy who suggests poking the bear, but what if we escalate? Kala raised an eyebrow. Go on. We know the council is fractured, he said. Not everyone's on board with the tribute demand. If we can exploit those divisions, maybe we can turn some of their heavyweights to our side, or at least get them too distracted to focus on us. Kala grinned, her sharp, predatory smile. You've got the makings of a diplomat, Monroe. All right, let's divide and conquer. The first crack in the council's unity appeared sooner than anyone expected. During the emergency session, the Zelvan Syndicate, a coalition of ruthless traitors, voiced their discontent. 70% is absurd. Their emissary snarled, its snake-like body coiling with agitation. This sets a dangerous precedent. If you bleed humanity dry today, what stops you from coming for us tomorrow? The Torvan representative, a towering figure of shadow and smoke, sneered. Your greed blinds you, Zelvan. Humanity is a reckless species, and they must be taught their place. But at what cost? Another voice interjected, this one belonging to the soft-spoken Ikri, an aquatic race whose ambassador floated in a spherical water chamber. The humans have shown resilience before. If pushed too far, they may retaliate in ways we cannot predict. The chamber erupted into argument, species pitted against one another in a cacophony of competing interests. From the human table, Kala watched with calculated detachment, her expression unreadable. Looks like we're not the only ones who know how to stir the pot, Jared murmured. Let them fight, Kala said. The more they bicker, the more time we have to execute Plan B. Plan B? Jared asked, but Kala merely smirked. Back on Earth, Plan B was in full swing. While the legal team continued to bog the council down in procedural mire, Earth's scientific community unveiled a bold, controversial initiative, the Beacon Project. The idea was simple but audacious: broadcast humanity's defiance to every corner of the galaxy. The message would serve two purposes. It would rally potential allies among other oppressed species while painting humanity as a dangerous wildcard to the Council's more cautious factions. Are we sure about this? Jared asked as he watched the test broadcast. On the screen, Kala delivered a fiery speech against tyranny, her words backed by images of Earth's history, the triumphs, the struggles, and the unyielding spirit of its people. It's risky, Mia admitted. But if it works, it could change the narrative. Instead of being seen as upstarts, we'll be seen as leaders of a resistance. And if it backfires? Jared pressed. Then we're already screwed, Kala said bluntly. The broadcast went live the next day, transmitting across frequencies known and unknown. Within hours, the galaxy was abuzz. In distant corners of the universe, enslaved and downtrodden species received the message with awe and hope. On worlds under the Council's heel, whispers of rebellion began to stir. But the Council's reaction was swift and brutal. Voracis issued a decree condemning humanity's actions as reckless insubordination, and announced a blockade of Earth's trade routes. Fleets from the Torvan Collective and the Brylon Accord began amassing on the fringes of human-controlled space. The stakes had officially escalated. Blockades tighter than we expected, Jared reported grimly as the holographic map displayed the growing enemy fleet. They've cut off major supply lines to the colonies. We're looking at food shortages within weeks. Kala frowned but didn't panic. We knew this was coming. Mia, how's the alliance building going? We've got feelers out to a dozen species, Mia said. The Zelvan Syndicate is showing interest, but they'll want something in return. The Ikri are sympathetic, but they're scared of open conflict. Then we give them courage, Kala said. Jared, I want a show of strength. Pull a squadron from the 3rd Fleet and stage a patrol near the blockade. That's a provocation, Jared warned. Exactly, Kala said. But not too provocative. Just enough to remind them we're not backing down. The patrol worked. The sight of sleek human ships cruising boldly near the blockade sent a clear message. Humanity was still in the game. But the Council wasn't deterred. The Torvan fleet advanced, encircling a key trade station near the edge of human space. If it fell, the blockade would tighten further, leaving Earth's colonies vulnerable. Kala faced the situation with grim determination. This is their move to break us, she said. If they succeed here, the rest of the galaxy will see us as weak. And if we fight back? Jared asked. Then we risk open war, she admitted. But sometimes you have to risk everything to win. As the Torvan fleet closed in, humanity's response was unorthodox, as always. Instead of meeting the enemy with brute force, they deployed a fleet of decoy ships, holographic projections designed to appear as massive war vessels. When the Torvan ships engaged the decoys, human forces launched a surprise counterattack, disabling several key enemy vessels before retreating into the safety of a nearby asteroid field. The maneuver was a tactical masterpiece, one that left the Torvan collective humiliated and the rest of the Council scrambling to reassess their strategy. But the victory came at a cost. Several human ships were lost, and the blockade, while weakened, remained in place. Back aboard the Aurelia Nexus, Kala knew the battle was far from over. "We've bought ourselves some breathing room," she said. "But the real fight is just beginning." Jared, ever the optimist, grinned. "Good thing humanity thrives under pressure." Kala returned his smile, though her eyes burned with determination. "Let's make them regret picking a fight with us." The Aurelia Nexus was in uproar. News of humanity's audacious skirmish against the Torvan fleet had spread like wildfire, igniting fresh debates among the Galactic Council. Some factions admired Earth's resourcefulness, others saw their actions as reckless provocation. But one thing was certain: the humans were no longer a mere curiosity, they were a problem. Prime Arbiter Voracis, now radiating with what could only be described as crystalline frustration, summoned yet another emergency session. The chamber was more crowded than ever, a dense and volatile mix of outrage, fear, and grudging respect filling the air. Kala Renshaw, seated at humanity's now infamous table, was uncharacteristically quiet. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, taking stock of the Council's mood. Jared Monroe sat beside her, fiddling with his tablet. His usual levity was absent, the stakes had become too high. Voracis's staff struck the floor, and the sound resonated like a cathedral bell shattering mid-chime. "Members of the Council, the situation has reached a critical juncture. Humanity's defiance threatens the very fabric of our unity. It is clear that decisive action must be taken." There was no murmuring this time. The silence was heavy, expectant. "We propose that humanity be placed under galactic quarantine," Voracis continued. "No trade, no travel, no communication beyond their system. They will be isolated until they submit to the Council's authority." A wave of murmurs broke out then, approving grunts from the Torvan delegation, cautious nods from others. The Zelvan Syndicate representative narrowed its eyes, clearly calculating the economic impact of such a move. Kala stood, her presence commanding. "Quarantine?" she repeated, her tone laced with incredulity. "Do you hear yourselves? You're talking about cutting off an entire species because we said no to your absurd tribute demand. You leave us no choice," Voracis replied coldly. "Of course, there's a choice," Kala shot back. "But it's easier to try to bully the new kids on the block than admit your system is broken." The room erupted into arguments again, species shouting over each other in a cacophony of opinions. Kala turned to Jared, who was already typing furiously on his tablet. "We need to escalate," he muttered under his breath. Kala smirked. "I was hoping you'd say that." In orbit around Earth, the Beacon Project was preparing for its next transmission. After the success of the first message, the team had been working on something far bolder. This time, the broadcast wasn't just a rallying cry, it was a challenge. "Are we really doing this?" Jared asked as he stared at the final script. "We are," Kala said. "Because if we don't, they'll steamroll us." The transmission went live within the hour. Kala appeared on screens across the galaxy, her voice calm but carrying an edge of defiance. "To the Galactic Council," she began, "and to every species watching this, humanity will not bow to threats. We've faced extinction more times than I can count, and we're still here. If you think you can force us into submission, think again. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every species that's ever been silenced, oppressed, or exploited by this so-called unity. If you want to fight, come and get it. The message was broadcast not just to council members, but to independent systems, fringe colonies, and outlaw factions. Its impact was immediate and explosive. On worlds ruled by the council, dissent began to stir. On planets controlled by the Torvan and Brylund fleets, minor uprisings broke out. And in the shadowy corners of the galaxy, groups that had long opposed the council saw humanity as a potential ally. But it wasn't all good news. The Torvan Collective responded with a brutal show of force. Their fleet, bolstered by ships from the Brylund Accord, launched a coordinated assault on humanity's outermost colony, New Dawn Station. The attack was swift and devastating. Orbital platforms were obliterated, and ground forces were overwhelmed. Survivors managed to send a distress signal before being cut off entirely. New Dawn's gone dark, Jared reported grimly. Kala clenched her fists. They're sending a message. Then we need to send one back, Jared said, his voice hardening. Kala nodded, her mind already racing. Get the fleet ready. We're not letting this stand. The Battle of New Dawn was humanity's most desperate fight yet. A hastily assembled task force arrived to find the colony under siege, the Torvan and Brylund fleets entrenched and ready for a fight. But Earth's forces had a plan. Using experimental stealth technology, human ships slipped past the enemy blockade, delivering ground troops directly to the colony's surface. At the same time, the fleet launched a series of precision strikes on the Torvan flagship, exploiting weaknesses in their formations. Jared led the ground assault, his squad tasked with disabling the enemy's primary command post. The fighting was brutal, the air thick with smoke and the screams of battle. Kala, coordinating from the EFS Resolute, monitored every development. Her voice was steady as she issued orders, but her knuckles were white from gripping the console. Jared, status update. She barked into the comms. Command post is down, Jared replied, his voice strained. But we've got incoming reinforcements. We need air support, now. Kala didn't hesitate. Airstrike inbound. Hang tight. The battle raged for hours, each side refusing to yield. But humanity's ingenuity turned the tide. Using EMP weapons, they disabled several enemy ships, forcing the Torvan and Brylund fleets to retreat. When the dust settled, New Dawn was battered but still standing. Humanity had won the battle, but at a heavy cost. In the aftermath, Kala addressed the council once more, this time via hologram. You've seen what we're capable of, she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion but no less defiant. You can keep pushing us, but every time you do, we'll push back harder. So ask yourselves, how much are you willing to lose to force us into submission? The council was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. But Kala wasn't done. And to those of you watching from the sidelines, know this, humanity doesn't fight alone. If you stand with us, we stand with you. Together, we can change this galaxy. The message was clear, humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for revolution. The room erupted into chaos once more, but Kala disconnected the feed, turning to Jared with a weary smile. Think they're getting the message yet? Jared grinned. Oh, they're definitely getting it. The fight wasn't over. Far from it. But for the first time, humanity wasn't just reacting, they were shaping the conflict on their own terms. The Galactic Council's chamber was quiet, eerily so. The Council, usually a cacophony of overlapping voices, had been stilled by the weight of its own precarious position. Kala Renshaw's latest broadcast had rippled across the galaxy, sparking unrest in systems long cowed into submission. The Torvan Collective seethed, their shadowy forms almost vibrating with suppressed fury. The Brylund Accord's representatives radiated cold detachment, their golden eyes calculating the cost of their entanglement. Even the Prime Arbiter Vorsis seemed slightly diminished, the crystalline glow of its body flickering faintly as it surveyed the fracturing alliances around it. Humanity had not just defied the Council, they had embarrassed it. But Vorsis wasn't done yet. If humanity wishes to act as a spark for rebellion, it said, its voice reverberating like shattering glass, Then we will snuff them out, utterly and completely. As the Council murmured its hesitant agreement, Kala, watching from a secure feed aboard the EFS Resolute, leaned back in her chair. We've got them rattled, she said, her tone deceptively casual. Jared Monroe, seated beside her with a steaming cup of coffee, smirked. Yeah, but a rattled council is a dangerous one. What's the next move, Commander? Kala's smile was sharp. We set the trap. The Beacon Project had become more than just a tool for rallying support. It was now the linchpin of humanity's audacious endgame. As unrest spread across Council-controlled territories, the project's transmissions began targeting not just oppressed species but also sympathetic factions within the Council itself. On a remote moon of the Ikri homeworld, an underground meeting convened. Ikri emissaries floated in their water-filled chambers, their bioluminescent forms casting soft, shifting light. Across from them sat human representatives, their demeanor calm but purposeful. You've seen what the Council is willing to do, Kala said, addressing the Ikri leader via hologram. They'll crush anyone who steps out of line. But they're vulnerable now. If we stand together, we can rewrite the rules of this galaxy. The Ikri leader tilted its translucent head, considering. Your courage is commendable, Commander Renshaw. But courage alone does not win wars. No, Kala agreed. But alliances do. By the end of the meeting, the Ikri had pledged their support, joining a growing coalition of species tired of the Council's heavy hand. The Council's response was swift and overwhelming. A massive fleet, the largest ever assembled, began making its way toward Earth's system. Comprising ships from the Torvan Collective, the Brylon Accord, and several other Council-aligned species, it was an undeniable show of force. Back on Earth, preparations reached a fever pitch. Defense platforms were reinforced, evacuation plans finalized, and weapons systems primed. The newly formed alliance was still scattered, unable to rally its full strength in time. Humanity would have to hold the line, alone. This is it, Jared said as the fleet appeared on the Resolute's long-range scanners. The Council's throwing everything they've got at us. Good, Kala said, her voice steely. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget. The battle for Earth began with a dazzling exchange of fire. Human ships, outnumbered but maneuverable, darted through the Council's lumbering fleet, using hit-and-run tactics to sow confusion. On the surface, planetary defenses unleashed waves of missiles, targeting the enemy's larger warships. But the Council's numbers were overwhelming. For every ship humanity destroyed, 2 more took its place. The blockade began to tighten, and losses mounted. In the midst of the chaos, Kala received a transmission from Mia Tanaka. The Council's flagship is broadcasting a command signal, Mia said. It's coordinating their fleet. If we can take it out, we might have a chance. Kala nodded. Jared, assemble a strike team. We're going in. You mean aboard their flagship? Jared asked, incredulous. Exactly, Kala said. It's risky, but if we don't cut the head off this snake, it's over. The Resolute broke through the Council's lines, its stealth systems barely holding as it closed in on the flagship. Kala, Jared, and a hand-picked team of soldiers boarded the enemy vessel, navigating its labyrinthine corridors under the cover of chaos. Their objective: disable the flagship's command core, crippling the fleet's coordination. The team moved with precision, taking out guards and avoiding patrols. But as they approached the core, they encountered heavier resistance. Blaster fire erupted, the air thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burned circuits. Jared covered Kala as she worked to breach the core's access panel. You've got about 30 seconds before we're overrun, he warned. Plenty of time, Kala muttered, her fingers flying across the console. With a final keystroke, the core's defenses collapsed. Kala planted an explosive charge and turned to the team. Time to go! They barely made it back to the Resolute before the core detonated. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves through the flagship, disabling its systems and plunging the Council's fleet into disarray. The tide of battle shifted. Emboldened by humanity's defiance, Allied fleets began arriving from across the galaxy. The Ikri, the Zelvan Syndicate, and even renegade factions within the Brylan Accord joined the fray, turning the once overwhelming Council fleet into a fractured mess. By the end of the day, the Council was forced to retreat, its fleet shattered and its authority in tatters. Weeks later, the Galactic Council convened again, but the atmosphere was vastly different. The chamber, once a place of unchallenged power, now felt fragile. Kala stood before the Council, her presence commanding. "This isn't just about humanity anymore," she said. "It's about every species that's ever been silenced or oppressed. The Council's days of unchecked power are over." The Prime Arbiter, its crystalline form dimmed with defeat, could only nod. "What do you propose?" "A new system," Kala said. "One where no single entity holds absolute power. Where species work together as equals, not under threat of force." It wasn't an easy sell. But with the Council weakened and alliances growing, change was inevitable. Back aboard the Resolute, Jared found Kala staring out at the stars. "Not bad for a species they thought couldn't play the game," he said, grinning. Kala chuckled. "We didn't just play the game, Jared. We changed it." The galaxy, still reeling from the upheaval, now looked to humanity, not as rebels, but as leaders of a new era.